Good evening. Tonight we've got kind of pushed back a little bit, 6 o'clock scheduled start for the Public Works Committee meeting. I am Thad Kubishak, Committee Chairperson. I want to reach out to Mr. Tom Rayom, who had been previously Committee Chairperson for such a long time, and I appreciate the fact that I sought chairmanship with this, and he so graciously allowed me to do that. And we'll, with that being said, go around the room. Mr. Rayom, Mr.
Scott Kellogg, Alderman,
is sitting in for Mr. Lee Graff on the committee, and
Joe Eichstead, City Engineer.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Paul Ballard, Public Works Superintendent.
Jennifer Gossick, City Clerk.
thank you. And with that, we will go to item number 2, review Department of Public Works report.
So I have the report in your packet. It's fairly extensive. If you get a chance, please take a look at it and see some of the work that the Public Works Department's been doing. It is currently also posted online on the city's website under the Public Works Department homepage.
Thank you. Item number 3, consider a request from downtown businesses to temporarily remove the 2-hour parking restriction on the east side of 2nd Street between East Grand Avenue and Oak Street during the 2019 construction season.
So on the screen, we have a pictorial of the area of 2nd Street South between East Grand Avenue and Oak Street, and that's in the vicinity of the Wood Trust Bank. The bank has requested the 2-hour parking be lifted just during construction because a number of their employees during the day park in the movie theater's parking lot, and that currently isn't accessible. And staff reviewed this with Adam Tagan as well. Normally staff would not recommend such a request, but we have no position on this because, again, if there's patrons to be affected, it's likely to be bank patrons. The other businesses that may be using this area would still be able to use it. The 2-hour parking is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. only, and the other businesses in the area are open after those hours, where 2-hour parking isn't an issue anyway. The movie theater, the new tavern, those areas. So we didn't see any reason why we would make any recommendation to deny that request, and felt it's appropriate to bring before the committee for consideration.
Sure. What do you guys think as far as committee members?
I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned,
It's only
staff
for a month or so.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
And
I don't see a problem.
it's for contingent reason
Right.
of construction. So as far as that goes, is there a motion to approve temporarily removing the 2-hour parking restriction on the east side of 2nd Street between East Grand Avenue and Oak Street during the 2019 construction season?
Also move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion on the floor to approve and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Item number 4, review and consider approval of MSA's construction engineering service contract for Phase 2 of East Riverbank project. And I believe, Mr. Eichstead, you mentioned that you were going to have MSA's numbers for us tonight.
That's correct.
Here.
Yep. So we did hand that out. Should be copies floating around here.
Yeah, it's down there though.
We've got a couple of extras here too.
Joe, can I have one, please?
No, I need more. We'll get it.
So MSA's proposal here, its estimated fee for the work is $100,100. The scope of the work is to provide construction services for Phase 2 of the East Riverbank project. The third page has construction administration, construction staking, construction observation, and post-construction activities for as-built drawings. So those are the scope items that are included in the proposal. And from the prior Finance and Property Committee and Council meeting, that meeting had value tentatively plugged in there at $120,000. So because of the scope of that project was reduced slightly, they've provided a reduced fee for that scope of work. So staff would recommend approving it as part of the Phase 2 project in accordance with the budget costs that are available.
Does anybody have any questions, concerns?
That's within the budget that we requested. So
With that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept MSA. I don't have the agenda to read it. Once you,
Yeah, I could. You make a motion to approve MSA's construction engineering service contract for Phase 2 of East Riverbank project.
right. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kellogg, second by Mr. Rayon. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, motion carries. Number 5, review and consider amending recently adopted changes to Ordinance Chapter 7 Solid Waste Collection as it relates to the reduced or removed garbage and recycling pickup services for residential and commercial units. This is a carryover from the committee meeting that we had last month, where there was a number of individuals from a specific mobile home park came down who are losing services. And one of the things that we had talked about is what kind of potential remedies can we provide with this, because sometimes there are unintended consequences with good intended policies. And I should have supplied Chapter 7 the approved copy of the ordinance. Interestingly enough, on the website we've got the Chapter 7, but we don't have the we've got the definitions of Chapter 7, but for what reason published, it doesn't have the preface with the index of it. So that's where I actually had gotten this copy from the January City Council meeting. But one of the things, and the mayor had sent me an email, he isn't here right now, but the mayor had sent me an email with several, I guess, talking points as far as that goes. One of them was, and this is one thing that I don't know if we had discussed, Mr. Terry, in terms of our municipal side garbage removal, as far as is it the housing authority and maybe even the central garage or different locations like that. I guess brief me a little bit on what the city's plan was for those, because I don't remember discussing city-owned property pickups, and I assume that because we didn't discuss it, it was taken care of, or there was already a plan for it.
So we're going to do one of two things. Well, one of three things. If the if the municipal property generated basically 1 or 2 96-gallon containers worth of garbage, we were going to just collect that with our regular new garbage truck. We would, if we needed dumpsters in areas, we'd have the option of contracting for those services, because we wouldn't have a truck to perform those activities. Or we continue to research possibilities to continue to provide various forms of fall leaf collection. Here what we proposed is that we would require residents to fill the paper craft bags. We could use a loader and a dump truck to collect those. We could also look for a smaller single axle used compactor truck for collecting our own dumpsters if we so chose to do that. But generally, we're going to get out of the dumpster business altogether And we would contract for those services just like anybody else would.
What locations, I guess, and that was one thing that was not elaborated, what locations do we have that are dumpster? Is it the wastewater treatment plant? I would imagine has got either a 2-yard or a 4-yarder there for purposes that these 96-gallon containers may not work for that process. Is there any other locations as well?
So currently, we have dumpsters at the city garage. We have 2 dumpsters there that are picked up twice a week. As you said, the wastewater treatment plant, there are 2 dumpsters there that are picked up twice a week. The City Hall, there is a dumpster here. The Centralia Center, there's also a dumpster. Robinson Park, there's 2 dumpsters there. Mead Field, there are a dumpster both by men's softball and women's softball, so you could say 2 dumpsters there. Both fire stations also currently have dumpsters. And then Sandlot Park is also, there's dumpsters there. So there's about 25 different locations where we have 2-yard dumpsters.
And how many of those could we potentially utilize the 96-gallon containers if we set up 2 or 3 or however many? Because like I alluded to with the wastewater treatment plant, the way that it's designed and the stuff that goes into the dumpster, we would have to modify something structurally for...
Yeah, the wastewater treatment plant is actually, the 2 dumpsters that are there are for the process of the treatment plant itself. It comes off of the screen and then goes into the dumpster. I think Ryan had said, so also, I'm sorry, the West Side lift station, but that has been redone. I think Ryan had said that the West Side lift station could probably happen with having 2 96-gallon carts there, that it would probably only fill up 1 cart during a week's time period or whatever. So the lift station, or sorry, the treatment plant, I don't believe you could switch over to carts. In theory, probably just the fire stations and then some of the other park facilities, and that kind of was what the thought was, is that currently in like Veterans Park, we have the 55-gallon drums that the Parks Department staff goes out on a daily basis, or maybe it's every other day, and empties out those drums. You know, and we were looking at vendors that prepare or that make, you know, virtually like a cart corral that would be covered, that we could put the carts in there, you know, and then if we did find or purchase or even use one of our older trucks for that, you know, there's a cart tipper on the back, so rather than taking the bags out of the cans and putting them in the 1-ton and then driving up on the hill with the 1-ton, you know, you could simply take the garbage truck and tip the contents right into the back of that. Like I say, I've contacted multiple vendors to see, you know, our current trucks are, I believe those are 28-yard garbage trucks, you know, so obviously we wouldn't need anything to that extent, and so I've contacted vendors because, number one, the 2 older trucks are 19 or 20 years old, and the 2 new trucks are 10 years old, and they were built during the time period where we were switching from starting to do the particulating filters and stuff like that on the exhaust. And so that's where it's been major problems, and we could stick a lot of money into those trucks now. So the desire is to get out of that era and into something newer, and then also smaller, to be able to serve our purpose of leaf pickup for both the street department and or the Parks Department, cleaning up the parks, you know, and using a larger vessel than a 1-ton pickup truck and hauling leaves. And then also the capability of picking up that garbage, and then, you know, our 20 different dumpsters that we would have throughout the city in that aspect. So we don't have a true plan on that yet. That being, we're still okay with that because, you know, we will probably have our current trucks here until, by the looks of it now, July or August, because our trucks are now finally in transport to Canada to get the bodies on them, and it's 75 days from when they receive them. So hopefully next week they'll receive them. So we're talking about 2.5 months from that time period. So
long story short, when are you able to put together like a cost benefit analysis in terms of contracting out, which I would be kind of against if we were kind of creating this new program and then now we got to pay a vendor to collect this. But on the other hand, maybe there's a cost savings with that, but put together cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, like I say, I'm just waiting back from, sorry to interrupt you, but just waiting back from the 2 different vendors that we deal with and constantly searching, used truck inventories and stuff like that. So,
because if we can get back to providing lead pickup, and I got a couple calls on that, and again, unintended consequences. Sometimes we want to try and create policy where we'd save money, but reducing services. So if there is a possibility where we are able to use a rear, is it a rear discharge? Is that what they're called? A type
rear
of thing?
loader truck.
A rear loader truck. If we're able to add one into our fleet later on, a newer one, and not necessarily utilize the older ones that are costly to maintain, but yeah, put together a cost benefit analysis, and that'd be wonderful on that.
And just to reiterate, we weren't going to change how we do lead pickup. The only thing that we were changing is to require them to use craft bags so that we simply didn't have to cut open bags and dump bags and everything like that. We were able to grab and throw, so yes, except there is an added cost of those bags, but it seems like once we've started to talk about that, people are starting to use them and like that way better than using, the hefty grab bags and stuff like that. So
I seen that. I guess the only, kind of conflict, and maybe I might be mistaken too, is that there was a suggestion made that we only do lead pickup one time a year now.
no, we do it twice a year, spring and fall.
It was suggested, someone had reached out to city staff, and I can talk with you after the meeting about it, but it was suggested that we only do it once a year now, and that was the statement. So that's where I was, but I'll talk to you later about that.
Yep.
And that's good to know that it's spring and fall for leaf pickup. Is there any discussion as far as municipal pickup within our own stuff? Then as far as further discussion on this ordinance, as far as one thing that, and again, I wish that the mayor was here because that's what I indicated, is that we would be talking about this, and further discussion was talked about unintended consequences with residential units that are above commercial properties, one of them being by the tool shed. They're apartments above commercial entities, and they had been reserving city garbage pickup, and now with the way that the ordinance is written, am I correct that they are not getting services? So combining that, I guess, with the individuals that came in and talked with us during the last committee meeting, is there a desire by this committee to, and it doesn't even have to be tonight, but to reinvestigate whether we want to actually now provide services back to the residents that had services prior to our adoption of the ordinance, or to continue as a status quo with what we've got right now, and for lack of a better way of saying it, discontinue services from people that were getting it. And I know that there was a statement made in the past that were we violating our own ordinance at the time? Was it actually, were we supposed to be providing services to these residents? And the answer may or may not be yes. So with that being said, is there, and Mr. Rayom, I know you were at that last committee meeting where we, it wasn't a public hearing, but we did listen to the residents' concerns about that, and at least in terms of making a look at it or reviewing it, what we would want to do to move forward. And I know Mr. Graff isn't here, and to put you on the spot, Mr. Kellogg, I don't want to do that in terms of that would not be my intention. But if there is an opportunity to potentially remedy something that may look like it's has been, I guess, wronged by our ordinance, that's what I'd be looking at right now, or that's what we our agenda
I'd be satisfied with, I guess, what we've come up with and what we have here. Leave it with that. I know Lee's not here. I just thought, and you're talking about trailer park and that too, included with that?
Included, or we could have it, we can modify the ordinance any which way, you know, we would like. But yeah, including mobile home parks as well as units, commercial, residential units above commercial properties. And it would be designed for residential units. It wouldn't incorporate the commercial entities that we had been collecting that we're not going to be collecting anymore. It would just be residential as far as that goes, or you know, what the committee may choose to.
I'd be satisfied, I guess, with not reviewing or changing. I guess if it was right or wrong of what we were doing, and I think to me, I guess we made the decision in which route to go. That's I'm satisfied with staying with that.
And too, I don't know if it's a right or wrong, it's change. I did observe I watched on TV, so I saw some of the discussion. I drove through some of the trailer parks, and it seems like, why are we driving our trucks through a trailer park? You know, I mean, the liability of doing that. In fact, if we've done that, I would question, why are we doing it? So the way we have it now, I kind of agree. And like I say, I don't know if it's right or wrong, it's change, you know, and you got to start policy and practices at some time and change what we've done. So that's where I'm coming from too.
With that being said, I guess I'm not going to make a motion because I don't know if I'll get a second on it, and I'm not going to make the motion to put you guys on the spot with that. So as far as item number 5 is, there is no motion or action on this. And with that being said, we will go to item number 6 on the agenda. Review and consider 2019 asphalt bid. And Mr. Ike said, I think you passed something out for us. Yes.
We opened bids today for the 2019 asphalt paving contract. We had one plan holder, one bid, American Asphalt. Their bid amount was $213,870.70. They came about 5% within our engineer's estimate of $203,000. With that, staff would recommend approving American Asphalt as the apparent low bidder.
Is there any initial discussion?
That's the only bidder we'll have. I mean, basically, at their mercy, basically.
Yeah, and Mr. X, can you, I guess, explain if there are any other asphalt pavers in the area? How come it seems like we only get American Asphalt? Or is there where our streets aren't desirable for other companies, or is it American Asphalt being a master company, they got kind of the monopoly in the area?
I think by and large it's unspoken territories that they've kind of drawn their boundary lines, and they pretty much stay in their own territory. Obviously there's small pavers locally, but they don't bid on this size of work. So that's.
I will mention that we've met a couple times with our state elected officials, and once with the previous Secretary of the Department of Transportation, and have brought this issue up. Not too many years ago, a municipality could utilize the county to assist. The current laws prohibit that, and we've seen, because there is no competition, then we've seen asphalt prices change because of that. And so there's been some efforts. There have also been some good policies that have reduced some of the administrative efforts for municipalities and grant funding and things like that for for paving and street projects. One of the things that we've asked them to consider is turning the clock back on that. And right now, it's municipalities over 5,000 are unable to utilize the county for capital improvements. You can still use them for some minor patchwork and things like that. But there are times where it's mutually beneficial in the best interest of the city to partner with the county in some of these projects. So, we are continuing to pursue that. But as of right now, American Asphalt's the only player.
Is there any language specifically speaking on that? Because I think that this, interestingly enough, is a piece of state legislation that had unintended consequences. It was billed as being something that was going to promote competition and therefore drive down the cost for municipalities, that counties could not provide, and made it unlawful for counties to provide asphalt services, paving services for municipalities above 5,000 population, which Village of Port Edwards could utilize that, but the city of Wisconsin Rapids couldn't, Stevens Point couldn't, anything over 5,000 population. And now it has been a long enough period of time that we should be able to develop data, and someone probably already has developed that data. Is there a way, and you said, speaking with state legislators, has there been a non-binding but a resolution that the body could adopt and send to the state? Are you aware of any of your professional agencies that may have something already, or maybe
Sure.
like the League of Wisconsin Municipalities might have something where you could provide to the committee, and then we would also approve it at the council level too? And again, it's not binding, but creating that awareness and sending it to Madison saying, hey, we need to, it's broken, your law is broken. It's causing us harm rather than it's actually doing good. So yeah, if you can find something, that'd be great.
That'd be great. We can add that as a referral and bring hopefully a draft back next month.
Wonderful. Okay.
With that,
Yeah, I don't think we even have a motion on the floor, so
I'll move that we go with American Asphalt
for the bid.
for $213,870.70.
I'll second it.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Rayom, second by Mr. Kellogg, to approve American Asphalt's bid of $213,870.70. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Item number 7, review snow and ice control policy. And prior to the meeting, Mr. Cope had mentioned to me that may have been a referral of his. He had a resident or property owner contact him after one of the last snow and ice events that we had in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. And obviously, being a property owner myself, everybody was caught in that. But would you elaborate on that more, Mr.
Sure. So that particular property owner is a business owner along 8th Street and had some street flooding, and their building has literally no setback, and so the catch basin being plugged with ice, we had a rapid rain and runoff event, and they had water on their sidewalk, and were concerned about getting that ice removed and the catch basins flowing again. So the city, about 2 days prior to that event, had anticipated, we were doing snow and ice control operations like crazy, but we had also anticipated that this is potentially going to be a real problem. So we started 2 days prior to that, clearing out catch basins along our corridors, 8th Street, the Expressway, our arterials and major collectors. And then once the weather came, the ones that we didn't know about, the ones that we didn't get a chance to get to. You know, we saw flooding from that event, and you know, we worked nonstop. It was all hands on deck to get those cleared out. I know that particular business owner had contacted me. I believe they'd also contacted the city garage, and I believe it was within an hour or two of their call, you know, we were able to get that particular one cleared out. I mean, we had thousands of catch basins where, you know, we're just a victim of the elements. I have to say with pride that I'm proud of the staff. I thought they did an exceptional job, number one. Keeping an eye on the weather and taking the initiative to be proactive and get what we, you know, some of the areas where we know we have problems. And number two, I mean, we had assistance from the wastewater department. It was all hands on deck. We had the parks department out there, our street department staff. You know, police department was notifying us of areas of, you know, where there were problems. And, you know, everyone worked really hard to do the best we could. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get everything cleared by the time some businesses opened, and you know, they were victims of the circumstance. But you know, it wasn't for days. It wasn't, you know, in some communities you saw in the news, it was days or weeks where they were experiencing problems, and really by the end of that particular day, I think we were pretty well caught up. There were still some areas that had some problems, but they were minor problems. The streets weren't closed, businesses weren't closed, things like that. So it's certainly a challenge. My opinion is that situation is unique, and that our policy towards those activities, while vague, we know we need to take care of our snow and ice. We know that we need to keep our storm sewers functioning and operating. And I believe that, you know, in this situation, we did so with diligence. So, so I don't think there's any need to make any adjustments for that particular issue. You know, but I think it is good to review the policy once and again and see if we, you know, have any suggestions. The one thing that we don't have, there was some research a few years ago on, you know, how we handle damaged mailboxes. And you know, and at some point in time here in the near future, you know, we've come forward with some type of recommendation. But correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul. But generally, if snow damages a mailbox, you know, that's a situation that happens. If we physically contact it and hit it with our equipment, that's a little different story. But I do think there's potentially some definitions for, you know, what's reasonable. If the mailboxes are sticking out into the street and the plow's going by, and you know, and you've got to drive around essentially a mailbox that extends out, we may want to consider some language that defines, you know, what's a reasonable location, that if it is hit, it would have been hit because we shouldn't have been there, versus it, you know, staff's trying and it was purely an accident. You've got a private asset in the public right of way. You know, trying to define that and determine when is it appropriate for us to make repairs, and to what extent should we, as a city, be making repairs, or if they had a fancy mailbox, what, and we should replace it, what should we replace it with? You know, I think those are good discussions to have. I don't know, Paul, if there's anything else. But if you get a chance over the next month or two to review this, for the most part, it's also online, the policy. But what isn't online are a lot of the attachments. And some of these are not in color. I think it's attachment number 5, and that one's helpful, the alley map, if it were in color. You can see the highlighted areas if you look closely. But these attachments really help explain our staffing levels for regular snow events, what type of equipment's being used, who's on call for our ice control. It discusses what we're doing for snow removal on various classifications of streets, our residential streets versus our collectors and arterials and highways. You know, what the expectations are, how we should be clearing them, you know, at what extent do we need to be taking care of our residential streets. So that's pretty well spelled out in here. I think it's a good policy. It's been updated a number of times over the years, but certainly there's always room for improvement. And you know, I think taking some time to go through it and review it and come back with any recommendations that you may have. We obviously, hopefully, have plenty of time before we need to use it again. So I think it'd be good to have it reviewed and potentially either confirmed or updated before, you know, our next snow season.
And that's one I was going to ask you about in your professional opinion in Public Works, and not necessarily being I guess a meteorologist or long-term, but what if this is a new normal that we're getting? What policies could we or should we be looking at if in fact, and I don't think that there needs to be too many events to suggest that climate change is happening, whether it's man-made or whether it's nature or whatever else. Stuff is happening, and how we're very fortunate right now we're not in the flood basin of Mississippi River south of Iowa, and even in Nebraska and Kansas, and they're getting a whole bunch of rain today and into tomorrow, and we're going to see an elevated level in the Wisconsin River here in the next couple days. But is there certain things that we should be already being proactive at looking at potential changes if these weather patterns are going to be new?
Yeah, I would say, you know, given the events that we had late in the winter, you know, our staff was really tired, and you know, it was many days of quite a bit of overtime, and you know, those operating activities, you know, you've got to be sharp, because a lot of times we're doing it at night so you can see lights and things like that, but you really have to be paying attention to what's going on around you. You know, I would say if we started to have regular winters like this, we would have to take a look at you know, some way to relieve our staff, you know, whether it's additional part-time staff, whether it's contracting with some local heavy and highway contractors for providing some trucks and you know, some other things. You know, we were certainly challenged this year, but you know, we met the challenge, and I think if you take a look at you know, our response, I think most of the major events we tried to keep you up to date on, you know, what we were doing and where we were at and what our plans were. And I think we did a pretty good job in comparing to some of our other local municipalities and regional municipalities. We had a lot of compliments when people traveled to the area, you know, sometimes during storm events too, how our major roads were really a delight to drive on compared to what they just came off of. But certainly that's something that, you know, we'll consider and we'll talk about and bring back to this committee.
Good, and like I said, nothing specific, but as far as, I think maybe it might not be a bad idea to have this on next month's agenda, just in case, so it'll give us time to kind of look through this. Despite the fact that this is online, this is, unfortunately, this is the first time that I'm looking at this. But it's, yeah, whatever we can do to be proactive moving forward, and I think that that's obviously one of the services that local government provides is snow removal. So it's a very intricate process and a very involved process, time-consuming process, but a very necessary process for our residents. So does anybody else have any?
This is just a minor thing, but Second Avenue, I know they were concerned about the speed limit of 35 miles an hour, and they have mailboxes on the street. And I don't know why the post office can't go to the homes along Second Avenue. It just seems ludicrous that, you know, that even the postman driving there to put it in the mailboxes, that we can't do that.
So that's something that we can address with the postmaster and talk to them. It is not permissible for any vehicle to stop in a lane of active traffic.
Right.
So
why do they have it?
Well, there's some potential issues then with, is what they're doing there appropriate?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a law enforcement officer, so I can't give you an answer to that, but that's certainly a concern. I've witnessed it, and I've made a complaint to the post office about it, just in general. But that's certainly something we can
I'm worried about
address.
someone stepping out in the street to get their mail and then get hit. So that's a concern.
Not to get off topic, but one thing that is going to have a positive effect in that particular area is later this summer, from the roundabout to the north, DOT is working with the city on a realignment project there, so that those 2 southbound lanes right now, they narrow into 1 southbound lane and then break back into 2.
Right.
There'll be some additional widening of the east side of the road, so there will be 2 southbound lanes all the way to the roundabout,
That's good.
which generally is going to result in the through traffic. Not only will have more room in the queue at the intersection of the East Riverview Expressway or the West Riverview Expressway and 2nd Avenue, but they'll be staying in the inside lane, which means there'll be less traffic near the sidewalk, near those mailboxes.
There won't be that pinch going in.
And there won't be a pinch point.
Yeah.
So, whether it's permissible or not for the post office to be stopping in a live lane of traffic or not, the fact that that won't be the major lane of traffic anymore is going to improve that situation dramatically.
That's great.
Joe, do you have another copy of that policy? I'll make copies for the other person.
Wonderful, thank you, Jennifer. Is there anything further for the committee to discuss on item 7, review snow and ice control policy?
No, we'll look it over and bring it back.
Wonderful. With that said, we'll move to item number 8, review brush collection ordinance, and I don't have anything with this one either.
So that actually is included in your refuse collection. I think it's 7.09. Which is already in your packet.
You got
Brush,
it. You got a
yeah.
packet.
And that was a request
Okay.
by Alderperson Graff, just for general review. He didn't have anything in particular, just wanted to take a look at it. I think it resulted from a few complaints that he heard, or questions whether or not the city would be collecting. We had that snow event that resulted in a lot of white pine branches getting knocked down, and the conditions, the snow in the snow banks, the new snow on top of it, the freezing, it didn't allow the city to collect a lot of that material until after the snow was essentially gone. And there was some question as to whether or not we were going to be strictly adhering to our regular collection policy, or if we're considering that debris as, resulting from a major storm event, if we would be collecting it anyway. And what we've done is, if it appears that material was as a result of that winter storm event, we're collecting it as if it were a storm event. So we were collecting more than what the ordinance says, because we didn't consider that routine material placed out, that it was the same thing as if we had a major straight line wind event or a tornado event or whatever. We would be responding to clean the community up in excess of this, because this is designed for routine routine collection. So, but again, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, take a look at it. I know when I talked to Alderperson Graff, his intention was to not make any recommendations immediately. It was to essentially bring it to everybody's attention for some awareness, for some review, and potentially take action at a future, but not distant future date, if there are changes that need to be made.
One thing, not necessarily related to Mr. Graff, his referral, but one thing that we had changed, or this did prior to myself coming on the council, there was some talk at one time. We used to collect, I shouldn't say collect, when we did chipping process, we would almost take everybody at the curb, and then there was a time and period where there was some lot clearings, and then the question is, should the general taxpayer be paying for a whole lot being cleared? And then it was changed to like a 5-minute rule maybe, and then did we get rid of the 5-minute on there, or how is that kind
So
of?
the ordinance, the 5-minute was really a reference.
A reference.
It was a guide for staff. But the ordinance under section 7.091B, brush piles are limited to a pile size of 4 feet high, 6 feet wide, and 10 feet long. And then it talks about placement. And again, that's to try to limit that activity to, you know, a reasonable amount for a typical household. If it's a bigger project than that, we want them either hauling it to the compost site or having their contractor haul it to the compost site. That's just beyond the scope of a service that we have time to provide. You know, this is a challenging service for us to provide. There aren't a lot of communities that provide curbside brush collection, especially when they're, you know, maintaining compost site. But I think it's you know, it's nice that we can still do it, and you know, I mean, Paul can speak for the time that it takes for staff, but you know, we have to work pretty hard to get this done, as well as our routine maintenance activities. It's, you know, it's a challenge for us.
Anything further for the committee on
Very no.
item 8? Then we've got item 9, referral list. I don't believe that maybe I did carbon copy that.
You did?
Yeah. There is a referral list on the last page of your packet. And I don't remember if we took anything off of this or not. Item number 1, request from Alderperson Tom Rayom to discuss the future of A Street. There was a meeting last night. I was unable to attend. If anybody else had attended it, or if you want to take an opportunity to kind of talk about that, Mr. Terry, we can do that. But let me get through these real quick here. I'll read it. Alderperson Kelly, referral to discuss neighborhood cleanup program. If you want that still on there as a referral, we can keep that on there. Item number 12, develop a street resurfacing program separate from but complementary to the chip seal and street replacement program. I'd imagine that's all in your ballpark, Mr. Terry. Request from Alderperson Graff to review snow and ice control policy. We got that, so we can, as far as I'm concerned, we didn't take action, but we could remove that from the list as we can revisit that.
Well, I would suggest that we might leave it on there just
Okay.
as a reminder that we still need to do it.
Okay.
This is helpful not only for committee agendas, but it's helpful for us as staff that, you know, to look at this a few times a month, and as we're prioritizing our projects, and if
Sure.
it's okay with you, I'd like to leave it on there.
Absolutely. And then request from Alderperson Kubaschek to revisit the garbage and recycling ordinance. As far as I'm concerned, we can take that off now. We can bring back anything we want anyway, and we can modify any ordinance we want anytime at any meeting, regardless if it's a regular meeting or a special meeting. So, as being the chairperson, I'll have that on my shoulder if there is anything further that we need to address with that. So number 14 we can take off, but we'll go up to number 1. If there's anything, Mr. Terry, that you'd like to I guess, offer or explain or help.
I'd like to leave it on there. We do have 8th Street Intercapital Improvement Plan, and in my next month's report, I'll highlight. We have done some recent outreach to the DOT. But that is a project that we'll be needing to address, and so I think it's appropriate to leave that one on there. Same thing with Alderperson Kellogg's referral. When that was brought last before committee, you know, there's some ideas brought forward, but we haven't had time to, you know, sit down and develop something to satisfy that request. So that's something that's still a priority, but we just haven't had time for it yet. So if you're still interested, we'll leave it on there. And
Yeah, I won't go into detail, but I did look through the webs and so forth, and I found a city in Canada that does something quite interesting, and I shared it with Mr. Terry. And this came up actually when Ward 1 did a cleanup. And there was good news and bad news. They had a cleanup, but it was labor intensive, volunteers. It was a catalyst of certain people in that ward that took it on, not necessarily aldermen. And then the conflict might be where other parts of the city or other cities bring things in to drop off, like tires, and we got stuck with them. But, so I'm not in favor of that concept. But by looking at this city in Canada, does something unique, and I think as we get into the new garbage plan where people have things beyond the bin that you put out that they may want to get rid of, it's a way of maybe incorporating that, or cleaning up backyards, or they might have an old bicycle or things back there. So this, once Mr. Terry looks into it, or we talk more about it, and we can bring it back to the committee, because it might be, it's different, and it might be kind of, I think, interesting and exciting. It deals with recycling in a sense, and we have that with the metallic coal and with the solar panels at the library, and we're getting into a kind of a brand in the city, and this might be a nice feature. And they've done it up there and successfully, so we might want to just entertain the idea.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, sir.
So I think there's 2 new referrals. One is Alderperson Kellogg's referral, which is on that yellow sheet of paper right there.
Yeah. This one.
So we can address that in the future. I understand the objective, however, it really isn't a Public Works discussion item, but if you want it, we'll get it on there as a referral. The other one is, I'll add, is develop a resolution requesting the elimination of the state law of city-county partnerships of cities over 5,000. We'll add that one also.
Let me just talk to the one I put in. I don't necessarily believe it's part of Public Works, but what I don't want aldermen to be blindsided and say, we wish we know that you were doing this. And so basically what I was concerned was that when I was on Public Works, they have areas of our parks that are labor intensive. Like you might have a hill of 45 degrees and it's hard, you can't mow it, you got to get a weed eater and cut it and so forth. Or unattractive building in one of our new parks that we have. Well, I thought, and it came up with also in the proposal with the 8th Street brochure, when you read it at the end, they talk about there's no public art in the parks here. And so I was thinking, can you make lemonade out of lemon situations? And so I asked Joe Terry, and we talked about it. And Matt drove me around, and there was 5 locations in 4 of the parks that he thinks that would be useful to put a piece of art there. And so I took pictures of it. And then I made a little sketch of where they are. Then I went over to the Cultural Center, and I talked to, I'm hoping to get local artists together and just come up with ideas and just do maybe 1 piece of art a year, you know, but to take care of a problem, but have a piece of art that's attractive, and maybe retired artists or aspiring high school students would like to get engaged in something. And I thought it'd be kind of cool. And so the person at the Cultural Center said he'll try to get the artists together and we'll meet and just brainstorm. And I think it's interesting, and it's so basically that's it. So I wanted the aldermen, if we come to a proposal or ask, we wish we'd have known you talking about it. Lee knew I was talking about it, and basically that's it. I thought, well, that's not fair for the other aldermen, so that's why I brought it in, just as, hey, so you know I'm doing something out there. We wish you know. It's nothing serious.
Oh, no. And absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, if you've got anything and it kind of doesn't really fit on an agenda, we'll throw it on ours here.
Yeah,
you know, why not?
I didn't know where to put it.
It doesn't cost us anything to publicly talk about it. So
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, absolutely. And if it definitely can address, dare I use the word problem areas, but if it can make something better, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping.
Wonderful.
So.
Anything else for the referral list? Anybody have any other concerns? If not,
I guess I'll mention one other thing, and this might be more appropriate for the legislative committee. Let you decide that, but that's, to discuss the potential of a waterfowl feeding ban, especially given the investment that the city's made in its riverfront. We struggle with the attraction of waterfowl to these particular areas and the massive amount of feces and potential risk for disease or illness by the public. It's not healthy for the birds, so on and so forth. That's something that's been kind of on the back burner for a while. It's not listed anywhere as a referral, and it may be more appropriate again for the legislative committee, but I'll let you guys decide that.
Yeah, and Ms. Gossick, we were talking about getting a hold of Mr. Blazer because he's chairperson of the legislative committee. So we were actually just talking about that the other day. So we could have at least, or absolutely add that to the agenda item. So we'll reach out to.
Sure, and I can develop a referral then to the legislative committee, a written referral.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I remember, I was not on the council at the time, but I remember when the representative from, is it Supermass, had come down and was talking at the meet in there. And he had mentioned that by designing the park kind of south of the Old Eagles building there, that's where the geese are going to go because they just naturally want to go there. And I was screaming in my head. I didn't say anything because it would be futile, but it's not because of the attractions that we have that bring the geese. It's by people feeding. And the next day I came down by the river and someone had a 50-pound bag of
Popcorn or
something, birdseed or popcorn or whatever. That's the reason why the geese are down there and ducks and everything. So, but yeah, no, absolutely, that's something that the legislative committee can talk about. And otherwise, if there's anything else for the committee, anybody? Nope. So I will move to agenda item 10, and that is adjourn.
Also move.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned at 7:40 p.m. Thank you.